This is his last project with us. We're letting him go." Those words hit me like a sucker punch. My hand froze on the presentation clicker while 30 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. Brittany Caulfield, my VP of only 6 months, had just fired me in the middle of my presentation to our biggest defense contractor. There I was, standing under the harsh conference room lights at Steel Defense Contractors, getting my career executed right between the main course and dessert. "Please continue, Chuck." Brittany's smile could have frozen hell. "Let's not waste Ms. Steele's time. I'm Chuck Patterson, 49 years old, and until that moment I was Senior Cybersecurity Director at CyberGuard Solutions down in Colorado Springs. Don't ask me how, but my body went on autopilot. My voice stayed steady while I explained how our new network security setup had cut vulnerability exposure by 34%. The tech specs were rock solid, the implementation was flawless. 8 years of busting my ass for this account, and this is what I got: public humiliation. When I finished, there was polite applause. You know the kind, awkward and full of pity. Victoria Steele, the CEO of this billion-dollar defense contractor and former Air Force colonel, hadn't taken her eyes off me since Brittany dropped that bomb. As the staff cleared plates, she leaned toward me. "Could I speak with you outside for a moment?" Out in the cool Colorado evening, away from all that tension, Victoria looked me over carefully. "That was completely unprofessional and pretty damn odd timing considering your security protocols just saved us from what could have been a major breach." "I appreciate you saying that, ma'am." What the hell actually happened in there? So I told her how things went south after Brittany got promoted 6 months ago, how she wanted me to downplay critical vulnerabilities in our quarterly reports, how I refused. "Ma'am, security flaws either exist or they don't. I wasn't about to lie about it." She nodded slowly. "I respect people who stick to their guns, especially in defense work. How would you like to use those principles on a bigger scale?" Victoria wasn't offering me a job. Instead, she told me she chaired something called the Rocky Mountains Cybersecurity Institute, which funded fellowships for game-changing research. "We give people resources to fix broken systems," she said. "Your approach to security integrity could have wider impact." Behind us, I heard the click of expensive heels on asphalt. Brittany was rushing across the parking lot, trying to look casual but failing miserably. "Everything all right, Ms. Steele?" "Just fine," Victoria replied. I was offering Chuck our distinguished fellowship position, the one where research becomes policy guidelines for defense contractor cybersecurity. The color drained right out of Brittany's face. "Fellowship? What fellowship?" "The kind that looks at systemic vulnerabilities in defense systems," Victoria said. "Calm as you please. His expertise on security cover-ups would be quite revealing." Let me back up and give you the full picture here. I joined CyberGuard right after my 12-year Navy stint ended, picked them over bigger offers because the CEO promised real mentorship and growth. For 8 years, I delivered. My team consistently found and fixed critical vulnerabilities. Our client uptime hit 99.2% when the industry average was 94.8%. The Steel Defense account was my crown jewel. Built that relationship from a small contract into our biggest revenue stream. What Brittany didn't know when she decided to torch my career was that I documented everything. Every late night securing systems, every time she asked me to soft pedal security risks for the stakeholders, every instance where she took credit for my work. The whole mess started when our CEO retired and the board brought in Adrian Caulfield from outside, a finance guy who didn't understand squat about our technical operations. Adrian promoted his daughter, Brittany, over more qualified people, including me. Everyone whispered it was pure nepotism. Within weeks, Brittany started undermining me. First came impossible deadlines, then critical meetings I somehow never got invited to. Finally, she reassigned my best team members, classic moves from the how to push out a senior employee playbook. I confronted her after she demanded I water down vulnerability reports for the board. "The security gaps are what they are," I told her. "We can't promise protection we can't deliver." Brittany leaned back in her chair. "You need to be a team player, Chuck. The board wants growth, not scare tactics about theoretical risks. These aren't theoretical. These are real vulnerabilities in defense contractor systems." Her tone got ice cold. "If you can't get with our program, maybe you're not the right fit anymore." I should have seen tonight coming, but getting professionally executed in front of 30 defense industry pros still caught me off guard. Throughout dinner, I'd been calculating how long my savings would last. 4 months, maybe 5. But Victoria Steele's offer changed everything. Standing in that parking lot, watching Brittany's smug smile fall apart as she realized what was happening, something clicked for me. This wasn't just about saving my career anymore. This was about fixing a broken system. The Rocky Mountain Fellowship came with prestige, resources, and a platform. Fellows spent 18 months researching systemic issues, then published findings that shaped industry standards. The pay was generous, more than my current salary, but the real value was influence. I'd need complete independence, I told Victoria. That's exactly what we offer, she said. Freedom to examine whatever problems you find. Brittany cut in, her voice tight. Ms. Steele, maybe we should talk about your contract renewals for next quarter. Chuck's departure means we'll need to restructure our security protocols. Victoria shut her down cold. I'm putting a hold on expanding services until I see how your leadership change affects quality. That's when I knew the game was really starting. 2 months later, I started my fellowship. My research topic was vulnerability disclosure ethics and defense industry accountability. Sounds boring, right? It wasn't. I interviewed cybersecurity pros across the defense sector, gathering evidence of how vulnerability suppression was compromising national security. I didn't name CyberGuard specifically, didn't need to. The patterns were everywhere. When I published my preliminary findings, industry insiders knew exactly what I was talking about. 3 board members from my old company called me privately. We had no idea how systematic this was, one admitted. That felt good. But the real satisfaction came from watching what happened next. Brittany was struggling without me. The Steele account started falling apart. Victoria had quietly cut their contract scope by 40%, citing methodology concerns. Translation: she didn't trust their security anymore. Can't say I blamed her. 6 months into my fellowship, I got an unexpected visitor. Adrian Caulfield, Brittany's dad and my former CEO, requested a meeting at my new office. You've stirred up quite a hornet's nest, he said, settling into the visitor's chair like he owned the place. Research tends to do that. Your paper on disclosure ethics has some board members asking uncomfortable questions. I didn't let anything show on my face. Good questions lead to better security. Adrian leaned forward. Look, mistakes were made. We both know Brittany overstepped her bounds. What would it take to bring you back? Name your price. The offer was everything I'd wanted a year ago. Director-level position, big compensation bump, even a board advisory role. But I'd glimpsed something bigger than just my career at one company. I'm not interested in coming back, I said. I'm interested in changing how this whole industry works. His face darkened. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise, I said. Transparency and accountability aren't optional in defense work. After he left, I sat alone, hands shaking a little. The old Chuck would have taken that offer in a heartbeat. The new Chuck had different plans. What Adrian didn't get was that I wasn't going after him or Brittany personally. I was tearing down the system that let people like them succeed. My fellowship report was almost done, and its recommendations were about to become DoD contractor requirements. Companies would have to implement new transparency measures for vulnerability disclosure. No more hiding critical flaws to protect profits. But the real test was coming. I'd been invited to speak at the National Defense Technology Summit in Denver, the annual gathering where Brittany would definitely show up. This would be our first face-to-face since that dinner, and I'd spent a year preparing for this moment. 3 days before the summit, I got an anonymous message. Brittany knows you're speaking. She's planning to discredit you. Game time. After months of research, I had my own ammunition, and it would make my public humiliation look like a minor inconvenience compared to what was coming. The National Defense Technology Summit was at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. Perfect venue for what I had planned. Walking into that sprawling conference center brought back memories of similar events where I'd stood in Brittany's shadow while she claimed credit for my work. Not today. Today, I was a featured speaker. My presentation was scheduled for day 3, giving me time to watch and wait. I saw Brittany working the room, shaking hands and schmoozing. Her company's security ratings had tanked since I left, but her networking skills were still sharp. On day 2, I attended a panel where Brittany was speaking. The moderator asked about vulnerability disclosure practices, my exact research topic. We've always maintained the highest standards, Brittany declared, looking straight at me in the audience. Some former employees might claim otherwise for personal gain, but our track record speaks for itself. Several people turned to look at me. I just smiled and took notes. After the panel, Victoria found me in the hallway. Subtle as a brick, wasn't she? About as subtle as my termination announcement. Victoria's eyes lit up. Nervous about tomorrow? Not nervous. Ready. Good, because the committee made a last-minute addition to your panel. She paused. Adrian's joining you. My heart rate jumped. Both Brittany and Adrian would be there, positioned to tear me apart. The anonymous warning made perfect sense now. Perfect, I said, sounding more confident than I felt. More people to hear what needs saying. That evening, another message arrived. Check your presentation file. It's been tampered with. Sure enough, someone had altered my slides. Key vulnerability statistics were subtly changed to make my conclusions look wrong. If I'd used that file, I would have presented false data and destroyed my credibility instantly. I restored the correct data and added security locks. Then I did something clever, created a decoy presentation and left it where they could find it. The next morning, I got to the ballroom early. The place filled fast. My session on transparency and defense cybersecurity had generated serious buzz after my fellowship publications. Brittany and Adrian walked in together, taking front row seats. Real power move. Need technical help? Brittany called out. These systems can be tricky. I've got it covered, I replied. Thanks for asking. The moderator introduced our panel. When they announced my name, the applause was solid. My research had made waves throughout the defense community. Instead of using the conference system, I connected my personal laptop. No way I was falling for their sabotage. Morning, everyone, I started. For the past 18 months, I've been researching how vulnerability suppression affects our national security. Today I'll share findings and solutions. As I went through my presentation, I caught Brittany's confused look. She'd expected me to crash and burn with corrupted data. Her moment of triumph wasn't happening. During Q&A, Adrian raised his hand first. Mr. Patterson, your research suggests widespread suppression of vulnerabilities. Isn't this just prioritizing critical issues rather than deliberate cover-ups? Great question, I said. The difference is intent and pattern. When suppressions consistently benefit the company financially, when objections get silenced, and when national security suffers, that's not prioritization. That's negligence. The audience murmured. Lots of people recognize that scenario. Brittany shot her hand up next. Your research methodology seems flawed. You've cherry-picked examples that support your narrative while ignoring standard industry practices. I smiled. Actually, I analyzed vulnerability disclosure practices from 156 companies across 5 defense sectors. The statistical correlations are crystal clear. But I'm curious, which specific part of my methodology bothers you? She'd expected to attack my corrupted data, not my methods. The sample size seems too small. 156 companies is too small. Industry standard for similar studies is 75. I paused for effect. But maybe you're right that we need more data. That's why I'm announcing today that the Rocky Mountain Institute is launching an industry-wide transparency certification program. This was my bombshell, a program requiring companies to submit to vulnerability audits in exchange for certification. Companies that passed would get a transparency rating visible to defense procurement officers and contractors. Market forces drive ethical behavior when decision-makers have real information, I explained. This certification provides that information. Brittany's face went white as she realized what this meant. In today's climate, companies would face serious pressure to participate. Refusing would raise red flags with government customers. After my presentation, people swarmed me with questions and congratulations. From the corner of my eye, I saw Brittany and Adrian huddled in intense conversation, shooting looks my way. As the crowd thinned, Kevin Rodriguez approached me. He'd been on my team before Brittany reassigned him. That was incredible, he whispered. Things have gotten way worse since you left. The vulnerability reports are complete fiction now. You documenting the changes? I asked quietly. He nodded. Everything. But Brittany's watching anyone connected to you like a hawk. Be careful, I warned. This isn't over. That evening, I got invited to meet with the summit's executive committee. Walking into that meeting room, I found Victoria and 4 other defense industry leaders waiting for me. We'd like to discuss fast-tracking your transparency initiative, the the committee chair said. Recent developments have created urgency. What developments? A whistleblower submitted materials this afternoon about vulnerability suppression at 3 major defense contractors, Victoria explained, sliding a folder across the table, including your former employer. Inside were printouts of internal communications, dozens of exchanges between Brittany and Adrian, explicitly discussing how to minimize vulnerability reports and manage inconvenient security findings. The evidence was damning. Where'd this come from? I asked, genuinely surprised. Anonymous submission, the chair replied, but we've verified everything. Looking through those documents, I realized they contained information only a handful of people could access. Someone very high up had turned against Brittany and Adrian. The committee wanted to announce the transparency initiative immediately, with rollout starting next quarter instead of next year. We need to get ahead of this, one member insisted. If these practices get exposed without a solution in place, defense contractor confidence will crater. I agreed to the accelerated timeline, knowing it would catch CyberGuard completely unprepared. As the meeting wrapped up, Victoria held me back. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. CyberGuard's board is meeting tomorrow morning, emergency session. My pulse quickened. Because of the whistleblower materials? Among other things. Their second biggest client just announced they're reviewing all contracts. She paused. That client's CEO sits on this summit's executive committee. The pieces were clicking into place faster than I'd expected. When I got back to my hotel room, I could tell it had been searched. Subtle, but thorough. My laptop was in the same spot but tilted differently. My phone buzzed. Watch your back. This isn't just about vulnerabilities anymore. For the first time, I wondered if pushing for systemic change had put me in actual danger. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Patterson, a familiar voice said. This is Patricia Walsh, chairperson of CyberGuard's board. We need to talk. I met Patricia Walsh in the hotel's business lounge at 10 p.m. Empty except for us. Soft lighting making it feel like we were plotting something. Patricia was early 60s with sharp eyes that had seen plenty of corporate warfare. I prefer straight talk, she said without preamble. The materials submitted to the summit committee also came to our board. We've spent all day verifying them. I kept my face blank. They're real. She sipped her coffee. What's unclear is your role in this. I didn't provide those documents, I said truthfully, but I'm not surprised they exist. Patricia studied me. 4 board members want to clean house immediately. 2 are worried about market perception if we fire executives without preparation. 1 is still loyal to Adrian. And you? I'm practical, she said. The situation's unsustainable, but transitions need planning. I could see where this was headed. Patricia hadn't become board chairperson without serious political skills. This wasn't just information sharing, this was negotiation. What are you proposing? Help us manage this transition. Join as interim CTO for 6 months. Once new leadership's established, you'd return to your institute work with our full cooperation. The offer caught me off guard. I'd never planned on going back, even temporarily. Why me? Because despite everything, you understand our operations better than anyone. Because you've proven your integrity. And because this gives you what you want without destroying everything. She had a point. My former teammates would suffer if the company imploded. Getting revenge on Brittany shouldn't punish innocent people. I'll think about it, I said. But I need guarantees about the board's commitment to real change. Patricia nodded. There'll be a formal vote tomorrow morning. I expect significant leadership changes by afternoon. The next morning, news rippled through the summit. Patricia had called an emergency press conference for 2 p.m. At breakfast, Victoria joined me. Sleep well? She asked, noticing the bags under my eyes. Well enough. Know what Patricia's planning? Just rumors, but Brittany and Adrian look panicked. At 2 p.m., Patricia's press conference began. I stood in back as she announced Adrian Caulfield's immediate resignation and Brittany Caulfield's termination, pending investigation. Then she dropped the real bomb. The board has unanimously appointed Chuck Patterson as interim chief technology officer to lead our cybersecurity reform efforts. His expertise and proven integrity make him uniquely qualified to guide this transition. Cameras swung toward me. Victoria nudged me forward. This wasn't our deal, I whispered to Patricia as I approached the podium. Plans evolve, she murmured. The board vote was unanimous. Standing there facing those cameras, the full circle hit me. 18 months ago, I'd been publicly humiliated and fired. Now I was the appointed savior of the very company that had thrown me away. I addressed the reporters with steady confidence, outlining immediate transparency measures and investigation protocols. The questions came fast, but I'd been preparing for this moment longer than they knew. After the press conference, Adrian approached me. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. "You planned this whole thing," he said quietly. "From the moment Brittany announced your termination, somehow you orchestrated everything." I looked at him calmly. "No, Adrian. You guys did this to yourselves. I just refused to compromise on security standards. You expect me to believe this wasn't calculated revenge?" "What would revenge accomplish?" I asked. "Destroying the company would hurt innocent employees and damage national security. That's not strategy, that's stupidity." I stepped closer. "My revenge wasn't tearing you down. It was building something better despite you. Creating systems where people like you can't succeed using your methods." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Walking back into CyberGuard as interim CTO felt surreal. Some people avoided eye contact, embarrassed they'd stayed quiet during my persecution. Others welcomed me back openly, relieved that sanity was returning. Kevin Rodriguez was the first to approach me privately. "I kept everything," he said, handing me a thick folder. "Every altered vulnerability report, every covered-up security flaw, every order to downplay risks. I knew you'd be back somehow." "Why'd you do it?" I asked. "Because you taught me that integrity matters more than job security," he said. "And because my uncle Adrian might be family, but he was dead wrong." That explained the whistleblower materials. Kevin had been the anonymous source, risking everything because his conscience wouldn't let him stay quiet. My first board meeting as CTO was intense. Patricia walked me through the damage. Brittany and Adrian weren't just hiding vulnerabilities, she explained. They'd implemented an automated billing system that inflated government contract hours by 12%. "We're looking at potential fraud charges. How bad is the exposure?" "Bad enough that we might not survive without major changes," Patricia admitted. "Your transparency initiative isn't just good policy. It's our lifeline. We need to prove we're different now." I spent the next 3 months implementing comprehensive reforms. Every vulnerability report went directly to me and the board. No filtering, no sugarcoating. We established an anonymous reporting system for security concerns. Most importantly, we made vulnerability disclosure timelines public so clients could see exactly how we handled threats. Victoria's steel defense contract came back gradually. "You've earned back our trust," she told me during one of our quarterly reviews. "But more than that, you've set a new standard for the industry." The Rocky Mountain Transparency Certification Program launched 6 months after the summit. Within a year, 89 defense contractors had enrolled. Companies that refused started losing government contracts. Market forces were driving ethical behavior, exactly as I'd predicted. Adrian faced federal fraud charges and was sentenced to 2 years in minimum security prison. Brittany avoided jail time but was banned from defense industry work. She ended up in real estate in Phoenix. Probably still trying to manipulate people, but at least not with national security implications. The board offered to make my interim position permanent after 6 months. I said yes, but with conditions. The transparency initiative had to be fully funded. Security concerns would never be subordinated to financial considerations. And we'd establish an industry ethics council to maintain standards across all defense contractors. They agreed to everything. 3 years later, CyberGuard wasn't just surviving, we were thriving. Our transparency rating was the highest in the industry. Client retention hit 97.8%. More importantly, we hadn't had a single major security incident since the reforms started. I kept my office simple. No executive ego trips. But I did hang one thing on the wall, a photo from that dinner where Brittany announced my termination. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes what feels like your worst moment is actually the beginning of your best opportunity. Victoria stopped by my office last month. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About what?" "Taking the long road instead of just burning the place down." I thought about it. You know what's funny? If I'd gone the revenge route, lawsuits, public accusations, trying to destroy them personally, I might have felt good for a while. But none of the real problems would have been fixed. Brittany and Adrian would have landed somewhere else and kept doing the same things. And now we've changed how an entire industry operates. Every defense contractor has to meet higher standards because of what we built here. That's not revenge, that's transformation. She smiled. The student becomes the teacher. Something like that. After she left, I sat back and looked at that photo again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken Adrian's offer to come back early, or if I'd just found another job and tried to forget the whole thing. But then I think about Kevin and the other young engineers who now work in a system that rewards integrity instead of punishing it. That's worth more than personal satisfaction. That's worth more than revenge. If you're dealing with something similar, workplace betrayal, public humiliation, feeling like your career's been destroyed, remember this: your response defines what comes next. You can tear down or you can build up. You can seek revenge or you can seek transformation. Building takes longer, but it lasts. And sometimes when you're focused on creating something better, you discover that success is the best revenge of all. Not because you've destroyed your enemies, but because you've made their methods obsolete. That dinner where Brittany tried to end my career, it was actually the beginning of the best chapter of my professional life. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that could have happened. You just have to be patient enough to see it through.